I'm Mario Martinez Jr., CEO and founder of Ingresso, and we are the creators of flymessage.io, the free personal writing assistant and text expander application. On each episode of this podcast, you will hear from sales leaders, practitioners, and influencers to help you grow your sales numbers at scale. So, get your pen and paper or iPad and keyboard and start taking notes as you're now listening to the Modern Selling Podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this episode of the Modern Selling Podcast. And I couldn't be more excited to have my guest, Mr. Tony Morando, who is the Chief Sales Officer of World Emblem, here on my show today. You are in for a treat. We're going to be talking about pathways to management and leadership, along with various other topics that Tony's going to be bringing to the stage, all around the competitive marketplace, how we're going to be able to handle objections, how we can sell more, and this is going to be a podcast you will not want to fast forward through. So don't turn that dial. Pay close attention. Mr. Tony Morando, welcome to the show, my man.
Thank you, Mario. Thanks for having me.
So excited to have you here with me. Do me a favor, tell everybody a little about yourself, about your background, and then I've got a very special question I want to know from you.
Absolutely. So this is my 18th year in sales. Grew up in Boston, Massachusetts. Went to school in Boston. Ended up getting into sales primarily a couple of years after graduating. Had a pretty successful career there and was transferred out to San Diego, California. I've been here now for 16 years. Been with World Emblem ever since moving to California and had various positions within the company. So started off as the territory account manager in the West, helped them open and develop the West Coast manufacturing and sales verticals, and then expanded from there to handling large retail accounts, specific target accounts, to overseeing our service department, to today where now I oversee all sales and service within the company.
And actually, if I'm not mistaken, you have recently taken on the Chief Sales Officer role. We don't hear too often an individual that has stayed with the company more than even 5 years, right? Like the old days when I was growing up, when I started in sales 27 years ago, at the age of 19, software sales, that is, at the age of 19. You stayed with the company. That was normal. 10 years, 12, 15 years, 20 years. But now, more than 5, you're like a lifetimer. So congratulations. It must be a good place to work and a great culture.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think you get to nail that with culture, right? So, I deal with a lot of salespeople inside and outside the organization. It's a lot of times people transition because the culture is not a good fit. Fortunately, at World, from top down, from our CEO to the operators that work the floor, everybody is really kind of engaged in the culture that we're driving, which is a very open culture. And for me, that's been a key to my success, is being able to go to management, to floor partners, and be able to have open conversations, which has been exciting.
Fantastic. Well, I always ask a question to all my guests on the show. And so I'm looking for something juicy, man. And that is, tell us something nobody knows about you, even if they're looking at any or all of your social profiles.
It's a good one. Great question. So I guess something unique would be is I'm petrified of flying. I never flew an airplane until I was a senior in high school. And the very first time I did fly, I jumped out of the plane. So that was my way of getting over my fear, was to go skydiving my very first flight.
And so now, are you afraid of flying? I can't imagine, because you're traveling quite often.
I've got thousands of flights under my belt. I've been traveling almost every other week for the past 20 years. So, I could sleep through a plane as it drops 100 feet out of the sky. It doesn't bother me anymore.
Gotcha. So, to get over your fear, you said might as well just go all in and face the fear.
Absolutely. Good little
all right.
surprise from high school, and it was definitely a memorable event.
All right. That's one way to be able to deal with your fear. Fast and direct, or the other way is slow and steady. Typical. That should have told you right then and there that you were destined for sales.
Oh man, yeah, for sure.
Good. Well, I'm glad to have you on the show. Listen, we talked a little bit a moment ago. I mentioned that you have become the chief sales officer of World Emblem. Very excited to see that and see someone that has rose through the ranks, has arisen, rose through the ranks. I think that is the right phrase. If my English serves me correctly, all of you out there that are listening, you can correct me on the show notes there. But has arisen through the ranks. And with that in mind, tell us a little bit about that journey. Like, how did you go from individual sales rep and 17 years later to chief sales officer? And you mentioned culture is what keeps you there, but something obviously is driving you to get there. And how did you get there?
Yeah, another great question. So it's been, when I look over my career, I've been promoted 6 times. I've never had a step backwards. It's always been forward. And I think the key to that is really keeping an open mind and be coachable. It's something I tell all my new reps that come work for me is, look, I think the biggest thing in sales is you have to be coachable. Nobody knows everything, and I think you have to be willing to make mistakes and learn from them. I don't think there's perfection anywhere in the business, and it's really important that you are able to make a mistake, learn from it, but also ask questions, right? Like, if you're not sure how to do something, don't be afraid to go and ask somebody. So that's been a big part of it, and set goals, right? So attainable goals and measure against them. I'm extremely organized from my Outlook calendar to my travel schedule. I know exactly what time of the day I'm going to eat dinner, what time I'm going to the gym, what time I go to bed. And that has been a big part of my successes. It's just keeping organized and being coachable.
Gotcha. So coachable, set goals, be structured, I think is what, I don't know if I'm putting words in your mouth, but time structured, is that what you're saying?
Time structured, yeah, exactly.
Okay. Now, you said something that was very interesting. I did some math while you were talking. You said you've been promoted 6 times in 17 years. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So if I just did it round averages, that's every 2.83 years. Interesting. So on average, I would expect individuals to be able to get that promotion between 1.5 years and 3 years. Like, you can see that progression. When I was growing up, every 2 to 4 years is when you saw that. So you're right within that wheelhouse there of when I was growing up and spent 18 years inside of corporate. However, today, a younger generation is expecting things to happen within 6 months to 12 months. Talk a little bit about that from a culture standpoint, where maybe you do have the Gen Zs, maybe you have the millennials, maybe you have the Gen Ys coming, whatever age group you have in terms of sellers. Talk a little bit about why it's so important to put in your time into something and wait till you earn it.
Yeah, I think it's important that you don't rush into promotions. A lot of people want to become managers. A lot of people want to become leaders. And the truth is, it can be lonely as a leader, right? You're going to have to do things that people don't like. You're going to have to enforce a policy and rules. And sometimes I think that gets looked down upon. I think you want to become an industry expert in whatever field you're in. And I think you really do need to take the time to learn, to build your process, understand what it takes not only to become a leader, but also how to deal with internal selling versus external, right? Because you're constantly selling your team, you're constantly selling outside. If you're not working both those angles, I think it leads to issues. So taking your time and really understanding what's involved, what the true aspect of leading is versus selling is really, really important.
Yeah, and one of the things that I talk a lot about to individual sales reps is, hey, we're in the era of I can get access to anything and get anything I want almost like that. And if I want to buy something, I run out of toothpaste, I can usually get it that night by 9 p.m. because Amazon's going to deliver it to me, right? At worst case, maybe the next day. Or anything I want, I can get it at the snap of a finger. And I really, really think that just talking through this as leaders, that a lot of individuals who are, whether they're manager or director and have been sitting at that role for 6 months to a year, or an individual sales rep, that we can't treat our career progression like we can when we need something from Siri or from Alexa, right? That the correlation between what we can get in our personal lives as a consumer of information and data is at a snap of a finger, right? But our careers should not be like that in that regard. And I think that's super important that people listen to, because we can't just expect that something's going to happen. And no seller can be a top performer in 6 months and be promoted. It takes time. Talk a little bit about that from your perspective.
Yeah, I think it's just learning. Again, it's being coachable and learning, right? So, I don't think I'd ever rushed through any of my promotions within my 10-year. My first one took a little bit longer. I think I was the territory account manager in the West for almost 6 years before I did get promoted. And honestly, it was, how do you build value and how do you offer the business something unique that earns you that position, right? So for me, it was coming in, I had a little bit of a sales background. I didn't go to school for sales. I had no intention of being in sales. It kind of sidetracked me through one of the events that took place in my life that led me into sales. But each individual step I've taken, I think I've been deliberate to learn and become an expert at whatever that process was. So whether it was managing a small territory, managing individual accounts, managing a small team, or managing a larger team, you can't rush through that because you will make mistakes. I think part of this is you need time to be able to make those mistakes, learn from them, be coached on how to get better, and make those improvements.
I love what you just said there. Give yourself time to make the mistakes. Whether you're an SDR and you're grinding at prospecting, which is the worst job in the world, to be a grinder and just be getting rejection every single day. No. Or worse yet, no response. It takes time. That takes toll. But some of that rejection is going to be not as rapid, maybe not as on a daily basis, but it might be on a grander scale when you get into selling. For example, I remember the day when I got the phone call that told me I lost a $40 million deal. Now, if I had not prepared myself and taken time to learn how to get rejection along the way, right, 15 years prior to that point, then I would not have been prepared to make the moves that I made to win that business back in less than 4 weeks, right? So I think that's something that's super important is we're so focused as individuals right now on instant satisfaction that you cannot treat your career. And what Tony just said, what you just said, bro, is take the time to make mistakes and learn from them. I mean, like, amen to that. Totally agree with you on that one. And by the way, I did mention a second ago, I did win that $40 million deal back.
Excellent.
All right. So let's talk a little bit about some of the common challenges that sales reps are facing in today's competitive market and how to overcome them. It would be great to talk about World Emblem experience in terms of your sellers, or just in general from what you're seeing in the marketplace.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think one, there's increased competition, right? So we think about, you said this a couple of times now, is this whole Amazon model. Consumers can go on today, buy something, and they expect it tomorrow, right? And that's completely changed the way, as an individual, we go out and buy anything, right? In our business particularly, World Emblem is the world's largest patch manufacturer in the world, with the largest embroiderer in North America. And our customers come to us because they expect us to turn custom products within 2 to 4 business days. So we can have somebody that will come to us, knock on the door, send us some artwork, and they literally want a finished product back the next day. And this has changed quite a bit over the last 10 years because of Amazon, right? Because they know there are other sellers in the marketplace that they can find this stuff. And what we found is you really need to build some unique value proposition around how to win those customers and how to really separate yourself from everybody else, because we're seeing new competitors pop up in the marketplace all the time. And for us, it's really the value that we bring as an organization, the value that we bring as individuals, whether we're managing accounts, selling accounts, then that's really kind of the unique proposition, I think, that separates good companies today from everybody else. And really, good isn't even good enough anymore. For us, we always tell our people we want them to be elite. And to be elite, you have to do things that nobody else is willing to do. You're going to have to make sacrifices. You're going to have to put in the hours. You're going to have to really kind of change your mindset that anybody could be good, but to be elite, you have to put in something extra that the others are.
So other than hours, give me more of what that extra might look like, Tony.
Yeah, I think I talked a little bit earlier too about becoming an expert in whatever industry you're in, right? So whether it's self-education, whether you're taking external courses, for us, it's constant benchmarking and best practice sharing amongst our team. So we talked a little bit earlier about making mistakes. Every time, every day, our team gets together every morning. We have a huddle every single day. Part of it is, all right, what mistakes did you make the past week? What did you learn from it? And we do that purposefully so that the rest of the team can learn from the other mistakes. Because guarantee if one person made it, another team member has made the same mistake either in the last week or maybe in the past year. So for us, it's constantly just refocus on the training, which helps us, I think, become elite over the competition.
Yeah, I like what you said. If I go back to my early days, I mentioned a little while ago that I started in software sales at the age of 19 years old, which is very uncommon and very rare. By 21, I was earning six figures. And by 22, I bought my first house right here in the San Francisco Bay Area, right? So, and I'm not saying that to, pat myself on the back. Well, look at me, I'm so amazing. No, but I'm saying that is because you said several things. You put in the hours, you put in or time. You also said you got to become the expert at that particular industry or your particular industry so you get the knowledge. And then the sharing of best practices. Your recipe that you just delivered right there, those are the exact three things. What I looked at was, when I was younger, was that most of the folks that I was competing against and everybody that I was competing against were my fellow internal constituents. So they weren't, quote, competing. We all had territories. But what I looked at was who was the best on the team and what did I need to do to be able to beat them? And to your point, the best on the team wasn't working a 40-hour-a-week job. They were overachieving on that time and investing in the career and in the time it took to be able to succeed. What I also noticed is that the best in the business were individuals that could go toe-to-toe. In this case, my first software sales job was selling EDI software. So it was working with the EDI manager or the AS400 manager or the Unix manager. And so it could go toe-to-toe talking Unix and AS400 shop, which is the IBM, AS400. We did a little bit of mainframe too. And that meant that they had that equalization of the industry knowledge. And then the third thing what I saw was that particular, the best sales people were the ones that were walking from cube to cube, and people would ask them a question on how to, what to, when to, where to, why, right? And they would be the ones to answer. So you nailed it in terms of the formula to become the elite, and that simply takes time. Comment?
Yeah, I mean, I think not only just take the time, but it evolves, right? So, again, when we talk about becoming elite versus good or great, the elites are doing different things, right? They just separate. You think about athletics. I mean, I don't know your background in athletics, but I played sports all through high school and college, and the ones that were always outperforming everyone else were doing things that no one else wanted to do. They were in the gym at 4 a.m. They were staying and doing extra training sessions in the evening. It's the same thing with sales. The ones that would be going on to the digital platforms, right? Whether it be LinkedIn or social medias, and learning how to utilize that versus traditional door knocking or cold calling. I think those are all things that are separating today's sales folks versus 5 years ago.
Yeah, interesting. I recently had someone say to me, my sellers are very, very tenured in terms of their experience with social media. And therefore, I want you to level up the conversation. And I said, with all due respect, I understand that they think that they know what they're doing. But here's why I can prove to you that they don't know what they're doing. And I simply pulled up their top 5 sales reps and the bottom 5 sales reps and showed them that they had 0 engagement. And then I said, let me ask you a question. Is it true that you have a sales cadence? And they said, yes. Is it true that in that cadence, you're supposed to have LinkedIn engagement? They said, yes. Is it true that there's actually an outreach for connection requests? Yes. Is it also true that they should be engaging with those particular buyers through commenting and sharing of content? And they said yes. Then I would argue they have no idea what they're doing on LinkedIn. And so what I would encourage you to tell people is that you're talking to the leading expert. I've earned that right and that title, and I know what I'm doing. And with that in mind, I want to make sure that we have people that understand very clearly what their responsibilities are when they're going after this particular channel, or maybe put it into video. You mentioned video. For example, and I didn't say this to the individual because we didn't talk about video, but if you're producing a video sales message, the number one mistake we see from all sales reps who produce a video message is they've got a big play button sitting right in front of their face. Now, Tony, any ideas why you can't have a play button sitting right in front of your face?
I'm sure I can think of a few.
All right. Number one reason on the board is this, the smile. You can't see the smile. And what the purpose of video is to connect a visual component to an individual's quick assessment. Example, Tony, if you were walking down the street, you look at and observe people around you, do you not?
Always.
And if someone looks like riffraff, you immediately take precautions. If you've got kids, you have the kids coming closer. Maybe you drift a little bit to the right or to the left to be able to steer clear because you're identifying that. But if you see someone that is dressed in high class, they've got a smile on their face, that's a neutral environment at that point, or it's a warm environment. And that's really, as an example for reps that are doing video, is like the number one mistake is you can't have a play button. So these types of things, when we're talking about some of these challenges, I just cannot understate what you just said, man. What you just said is so important. Take the time, put in the hours to become elite, learn the industry, share best practices with your peers. If you hold it all to yourself, that's not the sign of the best sales reps out there.
Yeah, so I think the only other one that we left off was just the objections, right? Is discussing common objectives, objections, and what to do to overcome them. So I mentioned earlier we do have a huddle. I don't know how other sales orgs are doing this, but every morning as a group we get on, we have these discussions, and part of it is what's a victory for yesterday, what's a priority today, and what's something that we want to share with the group. And most of the things that we share with the group are objectives, right? Like what are objections that the team experienced in the past week or past month? And that seems to be the training aspect that they pull out, daily from those conversations.
And let's just say you're a sales manager. You got a team of 7 to 10 people on your team.
Okay.
Would you do this at a sales manager level, or would you do this at a vice president with 100 people on a call? What's the best forum?
Yeah, we cascade it through the business. So we actually have huddles through all levels of the business. So we have our group VPs, which have the smaller sales teams. They have a huddle every day. We have a executive huddle every day. The production teams have their huddle. And it's really the same format across the business, right? It's kind of what we call standard work. So everything kind of flows the same way, no matter what department you're in. And the expectations are clear what they're coming into the meeting for, what they need to speak to, and what they should be taking away from a learning perspective.
And how long are your huddles?
15, 20 minutes max. We try to get off and on as quickly as possible. Again, time management is something really important, I think, for me personally. We talked about the scheduling and maintaining a good schedule. I really like to live by the calendar. So I tell my team 15, 20 minutes max. And then they get 10 minutes to kind of connect after if they want to rehash something or talk through something a little more in detail.
Got it. All right. Very good. So great feedback right there. So leaders, if you're listening in, make sure you take the time to potentially implement your huddles, daily huddles. I have not used that technique throughout my career. I definitely do it on a weekly basis, but on a daily basis, I know that in my old organization, our sales operations leader, he used to do the daily stand-up, so the daily huddles, or you called a huddle, he called a daily stand-up. 15 minutes, 20 minutes maximum, and it was to do the same exact thing. And I thought it was quite unique. I frankly had not done before. So I love that idea. Take it, try it, see if it works. Tony, I do have another question for you, and that is, one of the things we were talking about earlier was a memorable sales success story or lesson that you learned from your own experience.
Yep.
And I really think that experience could inspire or provide valuable insights to our listeners. Can you talk a little bit about that? Share that experience.
Yeah, so I think, I think of one particular case without mentioning the client's name, but, our sales cycle for our company is so wide in terms of ranges, right? So it could be one day, it could be 10 years. And one particular client that stands out to me that I'll never forget was somebody I had met with early in my career. I think year one, I met with their C-suite, and we were trying to sell them on our services. And the CEO at the time was really blunt. He said, "Hey man, like, I'm not interested. I appreciate you coming in, kind of your standard rejection, right? The time is not great." And at that time, I really didn't think much of it other than, all right, well, I'm going to take it on the chin. I'm going to learn from it. I'm going to do better next time. And I kept calling the CEO every quarter, once a quarter. And 10 years later, I finally caught him at the right time. He's like, "You know what? Come in tomorrow." Like, and this is Salt Lake City, made me fly in. And I ended up getting a 8-figure contract because of it, just staying on top of it. And the thing he told me was, the reason we are selecting you as our vendor is because the consistency. You never gave up. You kept calling us. You never quit. And it really taught me something, that I tell my reps all the time is, look, just because you get a no today doesn't mean you're going to have a no tomorrow. You have to stay on it. You have to be consistent, and you can't lose that communication. And always make sure that you're bringing value to every call. Do not call to say, "Hey, how are you?" Because when I get those calls, or "How's the weather?" it drives me nuts. Like, we're all busy. We all want to make sure that we're having meaningful conversations that are valuable to what we're doing and to our personal lives.
Love that story. Great story. 2 questions I have. One on the first part, and then one on the second part. The first part, what was the mechanism that you used to be able to remind yourself to make this quarterly call and do the outreach? And then the second part of that is you touched on a very specific nerve for me, and that is these voicemails or calls that people make that bring no value to the table. And I want to kind of dissect that in just a second. So in case I forget, because I do that a lot on my podcast, so like, what were we talking about? In case I forget, that's what we want to go back to. But let's talk about the first part first, which is, what was the mechanism you used to be able to remind yourself to do what you needed to do?
Yeah, so clearly we use CRM, and we've had multiple CRMs throughout the year. So we've used Goldmine, Salesforce, and most recently with Dynamics. But I've always been an active user of whichever CRM we have. Again, goes back to my pet peeve of being super scheduled and disciplined, of having my calendar kind of laid out for me. And I would always schedule all my future calls. So every activity I don't close without scheduling a future activity. And that's really hot for me, is that if I call somebody today, I'm not going to call and hang up and not have anything scheduled for the future. I'm going to call today. I'm going to schedule something out to remind me to call them either a month, 2 months, 3 months from now. And I still do it to this day. That seems to keep me on track and always keep moving something through the cycle. So yeah, I mean, that's really kind of how I've done.
Such a basic concept. Like, this is not rocket science, but surprisingly, I can't even tell you how many sales reps don't put in the follow-up task or item, and you're in a review with them as a sales manager, and you're like, "Hey, did you?" Oh, shoot, I forgot. And my first question is how could you have forgotten? I simply don't understand the how you could not have forgotten. I mean, you've got a calendar invite that you could create on your calendar with notifications that have a 15-minute reminder all the way up to a whole week. You've got a CRM that you can use that you can put a task inside there. You've got Google Keep, for God's sakes, a Google Task Manager. Any of these things that you can utilize is like just press that nerve again on me right there. Just it's like,
it drives me crazy, Mario.
I don't get it.
So, and I also think it's interesting. A lot of reps, like, I mean, especially the younger ones, I don't know if it's something that's not necessarily trained. It's kind of something, again, you learn over the years, right? But it also goes back to what I said earlier about creating standard work and making sure as a manager, as a leader, that we're setting up any new hires for success. And part of it is laying out what that standard work means. So whether it's CRM activities, call activities, follow-up activities, all of that is laid out, at least internally for us, through our standard work. So what I've learned over the years, I'm passing it down, obviously, to the next gen coming in by outlining exactly what they need to do to be successful. And then we measure against them, right? That's the second part of it.
Funny, my son, he's graduating from middle school, going to be going to first year in high school. And one of the electives that he can take is, I forget the name of the course, but it's an organization course. And my wife was telling me that he signed up for that. I was like, that just seems so boring. Why would they have an organization class? Like, who does that? And she looked at me and she was like, so you're telling me that you would be that you would still be successful if you weren't as organized with your drives and your calendars and your appointments? And I was like, no, that's a good point. And so she's like, how did you learn that? And I was like, I guess I just learned it over time, like as a best practice. She was like, why would they not want to train high school students to be more successful in their personal lives with learning how to be able to organize themselves and schedule themselves? And I was like, I guess you're right. That's a great elective.
It's so important, Mario, today. I think time management and organization, if you're missing out on that, or if you don't know how to manage it well, it is there's so many free online courses you could take now that help with this stuff. But I did take a course maybe 8 years ago on organization, whether it be email and calendar, and it's completely changed the way I work from managing my inbox alone. I mean, another pet peeve is when I go look at someone's inbox and I see thousands of emails embedded in there, not realizing the simple task of archiving, keeping things that are important or active in the inbox versus clearing out the old stuff. It's a game changer from just time management. Make sure you're not wasting time on things that aren't important.
I used to teach a course to salespeople, and this was prior to going into Vingresso. This is when I was in corporate, because I had a policy of a zero inbox policy. I'm sure that's where you're going with this. And reps could have most 25 items in there, and leaders could have at most 50 items inside there. I have tried to do this my entire 7 years of business ownership. And Tony, I'm ashamed to say it, but I'm sitting at 746 items in the box. And it's triage, right? Like when you're, as a CEO, business owner, I sell, I deliver, I do product management, all these areas that I have oversight on. You only have so many hours in the day, and I literally could work 24 hours and still not, crank through my inbox. And every weekend I sit down and I'm like, I'm going to crank through this. And I get through 100 emails and I'm like, oh, I'm down to 650 items. This is great. And I just want to take all the rest of them and archive them. But I haven't been able to manage it. And that's been 7 years like that. And it drives me crazy to be able to have a box like that.
It's challenging, honestly. It's one of those behavioral things that if you don't force yourself to do it and remind yourself every day, within 2 days, even like this morning, I have, I come in the day, I'll say 400 or 500 emails to start the day. I'll work it down pretty quickly to maybe 100 or so. If I go and get lunch, come back, it's already back up to 300 or 400. So you got to stay on top of it because it can spiral out really, really quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I said I wanted to come back to that second item. And I told you I would I needed to say it in order to be able to not forget it. And I'll be honest, I forgot. What was the second item?
You were asking about, oh man, now I'm going to forget too. Can you rewind this a little bit and come back to it?
Oh man, I forgot it. All right. Well, for those of you listening in, this is going to be a great one. So take the rewind just about 5 minutes. Listen to what I said it was. Put it into the show notes. Put it out there on social media in the comment. Put it on YouTube, wherever you're going to watching this at, and say you forgot to answer this question. All right, we're going to keep on going because I totally forgot what it was, and shame on me. My bad. I'm sorry, Tony. That being said, let's talk about, in your opinion, some of the most effective sales techniques or strategies for building and maintaining strong client relationships.
Yeah, so this is another good topic, right? And I could probably take the whole hour just speaking to this because this is really important to me. I think this has been a big part of my career, my success. a lot of our customers are non-contractual customers, right? So the business is earned through delivering value, earning trust. For me, more importantly, I think one of the big ones is active listening, being able to really, truly sit down and listen to a customer and hear their needs and be able to solve their needs. So many times I'll go out with sales reps and they'll ask a question, and as the prospect starts to answer the question, they interrupt them, they cut them off, and they start talking about something else. And I think that's a really important tool for any new sales rep that's listening or anybody new coming into the industry, is to learn this one thing, is to be able to ask a question and just be quiet and just listen. Don't say anything and listen, because what happens is it creates that awkward silence that the prospect tends to continue to talk, and they open up more and more. And it's a really successful tool that I've found over the years. So I think that's definitely one of the most important ones.
Okay, gotcha. Any other items you want to mention in terms of effective?
Going back to what we said earlier too, it's consistent communication, right? So making sure that you're constantly touching the customer, whether it be email, whether it be phone call, whether it be video, whether it be social media. Again, it's that kind of every activity should be followed up with a future activity, right? You should always be scheduling something after you complete the activity, so you keep that touches going. I think that's a really important one. Providing value. Don't call, ask people how the weather is. Don't call just to say, how you doing? Like, make sure that you're calling with a specific topic that you want to discuss, and it's something that matters to them. If you're just trying to sell something that they don't care about, they aren't going to get really far. And that's another really important one, as well as exceeding expectations, right? Don't overpromise something and underdeliver. And this is something else I see a lot of new sales reps make the mistake, is they come in and they offer everything under the sun. Rather than having a focused approach, I would rather, present something where I know we can exceed what the customer's looking for, but I'm not going to use that as my leading tool. I'm gonna set the expectation to be honest and genuine, and then hopefully exceed what the expectation was set.
Tony, I remember what we were going to talk about. And it's because of what you just said. What you just said was the voicemail, the phone call, and bringing value to each and every call. And I totally, okay, for all of you listening in, you don't have to put it into the show notes, because I do remember now what it is that we were supposed to talk about. You mentioned about this earlier. I want to deep dive onto this topic here, and that is the voicemail, the phone call, and providing value each and every time that you call, whether you get the person live or you leave a voicemail. So let's talk about the two environments. First, let's talk about you get someone live. When you say bring value to that call in a live conversation, expand on that. Tell me what you mean, and how would somebody do that? And then, in case I forget again, I want to talk about the voicemail.
Sure. Yeah. I think when you have somebody on the phone, I think you really need to realize you only have their attention for a short window. If you start talking about things that don't matter to them, or things that aren't going to improve their daily life, you're going to lose them extremely quickly. So for me, it's really about narrowing in whether it's a financial impact, it's a productivity impact. Like, I like to start with those kind of big picture talking points, because I feel like it grabs their attention faster. If you start going through and just talk about savings is great, but that may not be what they really care about. As a prospect, you really don't know. And I think, understanding that whole, the cycle of whether it's, pricing, whether it's service, whether it's quality, you need to understand that before you start calling a prospect.
Okay. Got it. Great insights. Let's transition to the voicemail. Is there a methodology or something that you suggest sellers do when they get a voicemail? First off, do I leave the voicemail? And secondly, should I be leaving value inside that and that particular voicemail?
This is when I'm sure we'll get a lot of comments back and forth, because I think there are so many different philosophies on this. For me personally, I don't like to sell through voicemail ever. I like to keep voicemail short. Yeah, this is Tony from Emblem. Please give me a call back. That's it. I don't go into details. I don't build value propositions in the voicemails, because I think it's easy to either be misunderstood or easily to be rejected and not get a call back. So again, I think this is going to vary depending on who you talk to, but my approach has always been no selling through voicemails. Short and sweet, company, phone number, call me back.
And how many seconds do you think you have to keep someone's attention? Do you think it's and actually I don't have any empirical data, maybe some, and if I go backwards in time into cold calling, maybe, I've got some data points, but how many seconds do you think you have to be able to capture and keep someone's attention?
Not many. I would like to say 15 to 20 seconds. I think that first couple sentences is what's really going to engage or lose the conversation. And it's not long. It's not long at all.
Okay. Now I have an idea. Tell me if you're okay with this. And that is, I actually have 3 voicemails in my inbox right now. And I've listened to all 3 of them, and I saved all 3 of these over the last week or so because I actually wanted to do a video on them and give my analysis as a buyer, right? So not only am I teaching reps how to be able to prospect better so they can sell more, but as a buyer, I sit on the buyer's side where people sell to me. And I have this idea. We will make sure that when we play the audio clip, if you agree to this, that I'll strip out or at least bleep out the individual's company name so that we preserve their integrity and their dignity, because I think that's very important when we use something as an example. I'll also make sure that we strip out the phone number or at least bleep that out so that we preserve the integrity. Now, live, we're going to hear it live. But when we record this, all of you listening in, you're going to hear the bleep and you'll understand why the bleep is. What do you think, Tony? Can I play this voicemail for us, share the sound, and have you give a critique on this voicemail?
Would love it. Would love it.
All right. Give me 1 second here. I'm going to share some sound right now through the handy-dandy Zoom whatchamacallit thing. All right. So let's take a listen to this voicemail right here, Tony. And first off, so you have the point of this. It's 38 seconds long. That's the first thing. And then you could ask me any questions you want after we hear this. Let's take a listen.
Hi, this is a message for Mario and the team. This is calling from the partnerships team, and I'm calling in regards to Vengresso. And if you guys already have a partner for texting and calling, we partner with agencies like for your clients, and then we have a partnership program that's a major source of revenue for our agency partners as well. So would love to tell you more, see if there's a mutual fit. You can reach me at 925-3, and I look forward to speaking with the team soon. Thanks.
All right, there you have it. That's the voicemail right there. Now, before you say anything and give any feedback here, number one, Vengresso is a SaaS company, not an agency. Now, 7 years ago, I merged a content marketing agency into Vengresso. That was 7 years ago. So now you have some context. You heard the voicemail. Tell me what you think.
Personally, for me, it's too long. I mean, I think there was some value, there was some opportunity she put in there, but she lost me after about 10 seconds. So if I was a buyer in that situation, a service that she was selling, for me, it was too long. I mean, I think it's quick. If she didn't tell me why she was calling and maybe she said the company, I'd probably call her back just to check in. Or I think she said something about a partnership department. I tend to find that when people use other names or companies I've done business with, I'm more likely to call them back. But for me, too long. It's got to be shorter.
Okay, so too long, needs to be shorter. Clearly identified the wrong industry of who we were. So it didn't identify to me as the buyer. If you're reaching out to Mario, which she said my name, so the good news is she had my name right. Yeah, that's the good news. Bad news is she identified Vengresso as an agency, which meant that either A, their marketing department did a horrific job at the data enrichment on our company, and B, we know that rep did not even look up Vengresso.com before calling us. Because had that rep looked up Vengresso.com before making that phone call, she would have very quickly discovered, wait a minute, they're a SaaS training company, right? They have SaaS technology facilitated by training and education. Whoa, this is not an agency. I'm not even qualified to waste my time on talking to this person because they are not the target persona. Yeah?
The difference between good and elite. doing the prep work, doing the research, making sure you know what you're saying prior. Also, I think there was a little hesitation at one point in the call where it seemed like she lost her train of thought. So maybe she's reading off the script. It doesn't come off and that's something I think buyers want really is a genuine conversation of interest. So
I'm so glad you said that, because my next comment was when she said, I'm calling to talk about Vengresso. Wait, so when I heard that, I was like, so do you know how to pronounce our name? Because pretty much if you go anywhere on the internet, you'll be able to hear me say Vengresso and not Vengriso, as many reps put that in there. All right. So that was analysis number 1. I got one more for you, and I want to deep dive on this one.
Sure.
And this one is actually 16 seconds long. 16 seconds long. Again, we will delete out the individual's name along with the phone number so that we preserve the integrity of the sales rep, because that's very important to me. So let's take a listen to this audio right here.
Hi, this message is for calling from TLI. Whenever you get a chance, please give me a call back. My number is 1595. Thank you so much.
So that sounds actually a little eerily familiar to something that you said earlier. But let's talk about that. So, by the way, it got routed to me because I'll tell you actually the because, which will close this part of the conversation. But first off, your thoughts. That's a voicemail.
For me personally, short, sweet. I'm intrigued. I don't know why they were on. There's no what's in it for me. But I'm curious to why they call. I would call back and find out.
Okay.
I don't know. I mean, he mentioned a different name. He didn't introduce it or ask for Mario, so it got routed to you. But I don't know if he called the wrong number or the wrong company. But the way that it was short, sweet, phone number makes me intrigued to call back.
So your perspective is pique the curiosity. Perhaps it's a customer. Perhaps someone wants to buy something. Perhaps we don't know. And therefore, as a result of not knowing, we would err on the right side, which is in case it's a customer, I'm going to call them back and explore this conversation. That's kind of your thinking in that regard?
Yeah.
Okay. I never thought about it that way. My perspective was I hated the voicemail. And I thought it was an absolute train wreck and disaster. However, now that I hear what you say, okay, I could see that. Although I don't talk to individual customers. The only people that I want to talk to are corporate customers. For obvious reasons, I'd rather spend my time on a $30,000 deal than a $69 deal, right? For obvious reasons, because we have a product-led growth side of the house. So for me personally, I would not have responded, and I obviously did not respond. And I needed more information. So at least tell me. For me, I want to know, by the way, I actually sent you an email. And this is one of the things I think reps do wrong when they say, I'm just following up on an email that I sent you. Dude, I get 350 emails a day. I get 75 text messages a day. I get 100 LinkedIn connection requests a day, in-mails, messages, and now add on the Slack, chat, WhatsApp, like it's overload. So don't tell me you sent me an email. You're going to say, in my opinion, hey, Mario, sorry, I'll do it for you. Hey, Tony, this is Mario. I want to make sure that you saw my email that I sent on date and time, subject, blah, 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 whatever it might be. Or I sent you a LinkedIn connection request yesterday you may have seen this connection request inside of your notification box. So now I'm going to force somebody to go look, like, what is this person all about, right? I want to form a connection. And if I can get them to form a connection, most likely, if they go look for the email, in my opinion, if they go look for the email, they're probably going to do what? Read it. They're going to at least read it. Now I'll get a notification that they opened the email. Usually, hopefully you have that technology built in with sales prospecting tools. And hopefully I get a notification from my marketing system that they clicked on the link that I actually had inside there, right? On the LinkedIn side, generally speaking, someone will go to look at the connection request. And what do? Inevitably, they look back at their rep's profile. Boom. That's what I'm looking to drive at is did they look at my profile? Because every single day I am mining who's viewed my profile, because that to me is what I call a social selling trigger. And it is a potential invitation to reach out and ask for a connection request. So That's kind of my style right there. That was my breakdown. I do like your pique the curiosity. And if I was thinking about potentially this was a buyer, I might actually call them back. So, hey, man, that's great. 2 ways to skin that cat. I love that. And thanks for allowing me to call that audible right
No
here.
worries, it's fun.
Good. Well, listen, we're running out of time right here, right now. So this has been a really great podcast. Great insights, everything from career development, putting in the time, how to become the elite, to we did a voicemail live review, like on the fly. That's great. If someone wants to connect with you, they want to reach out and connect with you, is the best way through Twitter, LinkedIn? What's the best way they can reach out to the great?
Different ways. You can find me on LinkedIn under Anthony Morando, or you could go to worldemblem.com and under the contacts see me there listed as Tony Morando on our corporate website as well.
Okay, and to be clear, on LinkedIn, all you have to do is look for Tony Morando. You said Anthony.
Sorry, correct, yeah.
Yeah, Tony and Morando.
Sometimes it's by Anthony and sometimes it's by Tony. So Tony, I think you're right, is LinkedIn.
Yeah, currently right now it says Tony, but Morando, Morando. That's how you look him up. And please, when you reach out to Tony, everyone who's listening in, and you want to connect with him, don't just click connect request and send a blanket one. No, you send a personalized connection request and say, Tony, I heard you on the Modern Selling Podcast. Great show. I agree with your voicemail reminders. I disagree with Mario, or I disagree with you, Tony, and I agreed with Mario. I don't care what you do, but at least personalize the dang thing and tell him you heard him on the Modern Selling Podcast. And Tony, I got one last question for you, and that is your all-time favorite movie. What is it?
Oh, wow. That's a good one. I have to go with the Fight Club. Yeah, that's a classic. I mean, there's so many good movies, but that one's one I could watch over and over.
All right, there it is. The Fight Club. I think that's probably the first time we've had that here on the Modern Selling Podcast in 7 years. If you haven't seen it, get out there and go look at it. Hey, don't turn that down quite yet. Listen to this very important message. Thanks for listening to the Modern Selling Podcast. Please do me a huge favor and give the Modern Selling Podcast a 5-star rating and review on iTunes. Oh, and don't forget, if you'd like to save 20 hours or more in a month and increase your productivity, go right now and download Fly Message, that's flymsg.io, for free. It's your free text expander and personal writing assistant. Hey, thanks for listening in, and until the next episode, good selling.